That's, of course, a slice of all the global commentary. But what happens to the oil markets amidst all these question marks around? Vandana Hari, founder and CEO at Vandana Insights, joins in on the show right now. Vandana, hi, morning. Just trying to second guess where oil markets are going to be heading. Nothing really has come about between all the meetings that transpired yesterday. It doesn't seem like there is a clear truce between Russia and Ukraine so far. But where do you think crude is headed?
Good morning. So I think it's going to be a holding pattern for crude, exactly as you just pointed out. There isn't much for oil markets to go by in terms of trying to assess what happens to the war in Ukraine, and as a result of which, what happens potentially to Western sanctions and embargoes against Russian oil, which in turn is related to expectations over Russian oil flows, whether there is scope for future disruption, or they will continue just as they are right now. So a lot of dots to be connected for the oil markets. But if you take a step back, there is something that has changed quite fundamentally from how the oil markets were looking at the situation going into last Friday's summit between Trump and Putin, and subsequently what happened in that summit and what has happened right until yesterday evening in the US, with Trump now pulling in Zelensky. And that fundamental change has been that until last Friday's summit, it was about a potential ceasefire, which the way I look at it would have been a quick resolution, yes, peace, but then leaves the big question of the genesis of the conflict, the fundamentals, reasons behind the conflict remaining in place. What has changed now is that it seems that the ceasefire is off the table, but they're now plunging into trying to resolve the much bigger issue, which has a lot of sticking points, right? Among them, the territorial dispute between the two countries, and then Ukraine's security guarantees. So where that leaves the oil market participants is a wait and watch mode. This now, obviously, the pivot from what I mentioned, like ceasefire to a full resolution, is clearly going to take much longer. It's going to be a long and more winding, more difficult path for sure. So there isn't really much point in sort of making bets right now on whether you want to go long or short oil. It's just wait and watch.
It's just a wait and watch. I hear you there, Vandana. But at the same time, Trump is proposing trilateral gathering going forward. If peace deal is signed and supply of Russian oil could increase, do you think there will be a change in direction at least? Because Trump claims to be a peacemaker at present.
Talk about, even as we are in a holding pattern, what could happen potentially in the next 2 weeks. I think the timelines I've seen are Trump and European leaders talked about 2 weeks. One of the European leaders talked about potentially 3 weeks. It could drag on a bit longer. But in this interim, what could happen is, yes, there is a chance that things could go south. The next step is a bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin. At least that's what we understood from what Trump said yesterday after all his meetings. So there are chances. The two leaders haven't met, Zelensky and Putin, since the war started. There are chances that it could just disintegrate into, back to a stalemate, or even a worse situation than a stalemate. At which point, then, what does Trump do? Does he go on with, impose secondary tariffs on China, Turkey, Brazil, maybe some of the other countries? But that is a possibility. There is a possibility that this just drags on. Things don't become worse in terms of Trump imposing more sanctions on Russia. My base case right now is that this could drag on beyond 2 to 3 weeks. I don't see a very high possibility of Trump imposing secondary tariffs on China. Brazil, maybe, because they are already at loggerheads on other trade issues, but not on China, in which case the picture doesn't change very much in terms of supply concerns with regard to Russian oil supply as far as the oil market is concerned.
Right, okay, in wait and watch mode pretty much all through. But Vandana, thanks for your time today.